Welcome to Pixelated Zen presents Nostalgialess. I'm your host Krovlar, and today we're going to be looking at the second game in our Spider-Man video game chronology, The Amazing Spider-Man vs. Kingpin for the Sega Genesis. Released in 1991, the game was developed by Technopop of The Amazing Spider-Man vs. Kingpin fame, and published by Sega of Sonic the Hedgehog fame. The controls are simple. A shoots a web or uses an item that you've chosen in the menu. B punches, or, if you're in the air or ducking, B kicks. C jumps, and if you double press it, Spider-Man will cling to the walls or ceiling. If you're jumping and you press A, you'll shoot a web line and then you'll swing from it. Releasing A will cause Spider-Man to leap off of the web. Spidey also has the ability to create a web shield that will absorb 3 regular attacks, and the ability to take pictures of enemies on the screen. The last 2 are activated by selecting them in the pause menu, then pressing A to use them. Like The Amazing Spider-Man on Game Boy, this game gives you a finite amount of web fluid. In the Game Boy game, you regained web fluid by punching enemies and picking up the cartridges that they dropped. That made no sense. In this game, however, Spidey must take pictures of enemies he sees in the stages in order to make money. Pictures of random thugs are worth $15, while bosses are worth $250 or more. At the end of each level, you take your photos to the Daily Bugle, and you get money based on your pictures. You then use this money to buy the chemicals needed to make web fluid. This is surprisingly in-depth, and it's a great addition to the game. The story here is that Kingpin has made an announcement on television that he has proof that Spider-Man stole a massive bomb, and that it's going to be detonated within 24 hours unless someone stops our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. To that end, he puts a $10,000 bounty on Spidey's head, and Spider-Man has to not only clear his name, but stop the bomb from going off. This isn't just fluff either. From the start of the game, you have 24 in-game hours to defuse the bomb, or it will explode and you will have to start the game all over again. This brings us to how you regain health. You can find a few pickups throughout the levels, but the most reliable way to regenerate health is to go rest in Peter Parker's apartment. To do this, you select the head icon from your inventory and you press A. You'll appear in your apartment, and the longer you're there, the more health you will regain. While you're regaining health, the timer will count down quicker though, so try not to overuse it. When you leave the apartment, you'll go back to the level you left off at, but you'll be at the start of that level. This means you'll only really want to be using it whenever you first get to a new level. Make no mistake though, it is almost always better to retreat to your apartment than to die. Usually, it'll take you 1 hour of in-game time to heal up at your apartment. You'll lose 2 hours if you need to continue. Luckily, there are infinite continues as long as you have time left on the timer. The odd thing is that, every time you continue, Spidey punches a cop in the back of the head and breaks out of prison. Kinda messed up if you ask me. The game has 6 levels, each with an end boss and several mini-bosses. You start out on the city streets. It's not really a level, all you need to do is punch a lady cop in the face, and then stop a mugging to show that Spidey isn't a total asshole. Then you climb the Daily Bugle, and you get a quick cutscene telling you to take pictures for money. Next, it's off to a warehouse, presumably to track down informants or something. The first thing I noticed is that the controls are a huge improvement over the Game Boy version. Spidey jumps around, clings to walls, shoots webs left, right, or diagonal, and can even crawl along the ceiling. It really makes you feel like Spider-Man. If you web an enemy enough times, they'll actually be covered in webbing, taking them out of the fight. And that's a nice touch. Once you get to a predetermined area, you're attacked by the first mini-boss, a forklift driver. I have to say, at this point, I was really worried for the game. I mean, of all the awesome and not so awesome Marvel villains to choose from, they went with a forklift driver. Still, carry on and you run into the real boss, Dr. Octopus. Make sure you've been taking pictures of the forklift and Doc Ock, as you'll need the money. Once you beat the good doctor, you find out that he had one of the 5 keys needed to disarm the bomb. Next, it's off to find the lizard, so we're headed to the sewers. This is actually the worst level in the game. Below the platform you walk on is sewage. If you touch the sewage, you take damage. That's stupid, but it's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that if you touch the floor while either kicking or pressing down, you'll fall straight through it into the sewage and take damage. This means that if you're trying to jump kick or land after a jump and sweep kick, you'll just fall through the floor and get hurt. Thus, your best bet is just to swing or jump through the level as quickly as possible while avoiding all of the enemies and still making sure to stop and take a few pictures along the way. Finally, you get to the lizard, and it's a rather easy fight once you figure it out. Every time you stand up, he charges. He can only take damage while charging, so stand up and as soon as he starts charging, duck and shoot webbing at him. Rinse and repeat. The next level is the power plant, and if you know anything about Spider-Man, you'll already know who the boss is. I actually enjoyed this level. It's extremely short and not too difficult, aside from the electric pixies that attack for no reason. The fight with Electro is my favorite in the game. It took a few tries to figure it out, but once I did it was really fun, and it's really cool when Electro electrifies the girders that you're fighting on. It's a really nice touch. After that, it's off to Central Park to find Sandman. This level can be kinda tricky, as there are snipers in the trees that make it hard to web swing around. Toward the end of the level, you fight another mini-boss. So who did they pick this time around? Hydro? Morpheus? Nope, a gorilla. And not the Simian, a D-rate Marvel villain. This is just a gorilla, and it's one of the hardest bosses in the game. It makes no sense. Not sure how or why that happened, but once you beat him, you fight Sandman. It took me longer than I care to admit to figure out how to beat him. He's immune to all of your attacks, so you'll need to lure him near one of the fire hydrants and break it open to flush him away. That is brilliant, and it's so fitting, but I never would have thought about it in a game this old. Next, Spidey can't figure out what to do, but he knows the Kingpin has put a price on his head, so he decides to just go hang out in the open in the city and see who tries to collect. Not exactly the smartest thing Spider-Man has ever done, but not the dumbest either. The first thing you see is J. Jonah Jameson yelling at you, and anyone who has ever read or watched anything Spider-Man related has wanted to punch Jonah right in his stupid face. Sadly, the game won't let you. Your attacks do nothing to him. Once you make your way to the end of the level, you'll fight the third mini-boss. Who is it this time? It's a chick on a bike. Of all the cool and lame villains they could choose from, so far they've had a forklift driver, a gorilla, and a biker chick. What the hell? After you take her down, your spider sense tells you it's time for a boss battle. The hobgoblin is waiting for you on the rooftops. This is another pretty cool fight, and the ability to shoot webs diagonally really helps here. What makes it really hard is that, immediately after defeating the hobgoblin, Venom attacks. 2 boss fights in a row. You need to defeat Venom on whatever health you had left over, and then he runs off to kidnap Mary Jane from your apartment in a cutscene that's pretty cool for its time. It's also very lore appropriate. Finally, it's off to confront Kingpin, now that you have all the keys. You first have to travel through an underground tunnel filled with turrets and bats. It's always bats. For several tries of this level, I didn't know you could even hurt the turrets, as my kicks didn't seem to do anything to them. Then I realized you could just shoot a web at them, and the next time they tried to fire, they would explode. That's awesome. For some reason, you also have to fight some RoboCop villains, which is an odd choice, but fitting with the Kingpin character, I suppose. Once you've made your way through the tunnel, welcome to Kingpin Base proper. After crawling through some air ducts, you'll have to fight all of the supervillain bosses you've already beaten, all at once. That is, if you jumped right into the room. If, on the other hand, you step just inside, you can take on Electro solo, and then drop down and take on the Lizard. Doing it one at a time makes the fight a lot easier. You can also just throw a web shield on and rush the bomb. Disarming the bomb is a real pain. You need to open your inventory, select a key, then press A to use it. If you pick the wrong key 3 times, the bomb explodes. You have no way of knowing which key to use when, and it seemed to change every time I did it. Still, once you get the combination right, the bomb is defused and you no longer have a time limit. The supervillains all run off as well, which means you have a straight shot at the Kingpin. While you fight the big man, Mary Jane is slowly lowered into a furnace. If you don't beat Kingpin in time, she dies and the Kingpin gets away while Spidey cries on his knees. This is an extremely hard fight, but only for one real reason. In order to hurt Kingpin, you basically have to kick him perfectly. This means that the pixel that is your knee needs to come in contact with the pixel that is the bottom of his chin, or you won't do any damage. The timing is extremely difficult to get down, but you basically need to hit C to jump, then roll your thumb over and hit B to kick. Not too soon, but not too fast. Do this and you'll see Kingpin flash in pain. To make things harder, every time Kingpin hits you, you go flying to the other side of the room and bounce off of the wall. Be prepared to see Mary Jane die a lot. Speaking of Mary Jane, she looks a hell of a lot better in this game than she did in the Game Boy version. Once you defeat Kingpin, you rescue Mary Jane and the cops come in and take the big man to jail. You and Mary Jane hug, and congratulations, you've beaten the game. So what did I think of The Amazing Spider-Man vs. Kingpin? A really enjoyable game, and a truly great Spidey game. The movement is tight, and it feels great web swinging and tying up your enemies. I absolutely love the ability to get cash by taking pictures, and then using that to buy web fluid. The game could have done without the 24-hour timer, but it didn't really cause me too many problems. The graphics are great, and the characters really look good, especially the villains. The only nitpick I have with the graphics is that there are 3 red pixels outside the back of Spider-Man's head. It's nothing big at all, but for some reason it bugged me. That aside, it's leaps and bounds better than The Amazing Spider-Man on Game Boy. and I wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who enjoys Spider-Man.